Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners! The Sounders rule the region! Seattle Sounders is campeón! All creatures great and small.
Rothrock going to collect it. He does just about. Runs into the advertising awning. Low to our left. Ball goes in. Oh, what a cross! And what a goal!
Where's my copy?
I got a bunch of them in the car. I'll get you some.
You're handing them out for free already.
How many
cost on them?
$50.
I'll Venmo you.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. It is Friday. We are back at the Sounder at Heart HQ in the International District of Seattle. I am joined by Niko Moreno for another episode of What We Learned This Week. Welcome, Niko.
Hey, what's going on, Jeremiah? Audience, we're coming in after a big W, home opener win, where everything seemed to go, for the most part, to the Sounders' best interest. I mean, aside from the one injury, I think that the Sounders look really good. So I'm excited to get on here, give you guys our takes about what we saw. We learned a lot, some good things, some not good things. So I have a feeling like people are going to want to know what's Jeremiah thinking.
So let's start with the good news. Even though Hassani Dotson went out with some concern about a concussion from the game, he was back in training all week. Apparently, he told us today he hasn't suffered no effects from no concussion-like symptoms. He's totally clear. He's been fine. That's all great news. Also positive, Kim Keehee returned to training this week, and then today he was all in at training. So I don't know if he's going to be available off the bench this week, but he will be available very soon. So that's obviously great news. The Sounders were pretty thin at center, or still pretty thin at center back, but less positively, Ryan Saylor and Stu Hawkins still have unclear timelines. I would imagine they're out for weeks, maybe even months, I suppose, at this point. Someone told me that the range on injuries between the three of them was 3 to 8 weeks, and I'm now wondering if both Saylor and Hawkins are closer to 8 weeks, which is crazy. Saylor has not trained at all. I don't think he's had one training session. At some point, we probably need to figure out what the issue was. Like if he came in hurt and he just was how did he pass the physical if he's still this hurt? I don't understand.
That is what I like to call the curious case of Ryan Saylor.
Yeah.
Because it is odd. I have tried to do my best to ask about the injury in a confrontational way.
Right.
But I'm going to have to go look for information outside the channels and see on background what happened, because unless somebody kicked him at SeaTac, I just don't know when the injury happened. And like you said, did he skip through something when he came to medical? I mean, I just don't get it. I didn't like the signing to start necessarily, and now even more just thinking about what happened. So it is a little bit frustrating to know that someone that's yet to step one toe on the grounds of the facility is still out for a while. I will say this, that I did talk to Stu somewhere after the game, I want to say on the field, and it sounded like he was pretty optimistic that he'll be back soon. So if it's not this week, obviously, because he didn't practice at all, I would think by next week he should be training, at least partial.
Yeah.
But he sounded positive that he was feeling better, or he was on his way to at least getting some reps in training. So I guess it's the Ryan Sailors, the 8-week one.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
Saying the Hassani one was interesting because, and I think you asked it and you were talking about it, he sounded like they were more concerned with him having a broken nose or something to that degree.
It sounded like he was feeling pain in his face after the injury, and so I think they were just being ultra careful.
And so that's better than any sort of like head collision where maybe your main concern is other things that are a little bit more long term. And he probably passed the questions initially, and that's a good thing because, look, I've seen the game maybe 3 times, and there wasn't a lot to see, and it was very slow paced and, stopped by the refereeing and all that. But there were moments there where I really like what Hassani did. And if I can go off of what he did today, I'm starting to really see where this could go. He had a phenomenal header today off of a Albert Rusnak cross, and just his understanding of how to attack the space, the report to kind of just lock in eyes with Albert Rusnak. I think he's really working on picking up the system. I asked him about the system and how much Brian's way of using his pivots asks a lot of them, and at times you got to be on the outside channels. Depending on how many guys are forward, you got to be inside, you got to defend. And he said that there's been a lot of film study that they're doing to get him where he needs to be. So, hey, it seems like if he gets in here and continues to do well, that's a win for the Sounders.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's a win for the Sounders. I like Hassani a lot. I think he just seems like he fits the whole Sounders ethos. I guess the other big piece of news that we kind of buried here, we did get an update on Jordan Morris. Now, it was funny. I felt like we got a little mixed signals from Brian, because on one hand, he was saying this is not good news, but then he also said he was out 4 weeks, and it was a grade 1A quad strain, which is the lowest grade quad strain that you could have before. It's just like not even on the schedule, for what lack of a better term. But he said, so 4 weeks doesn't seem that bad. And so I wonder if it's just bad news in that it's like he can't play this. I mean, I guess that's what he meant, is that he can't play this week. And I think Jordan's reaction probably had more to do with, I can't believe I'm doing this again, as opposed to, I can't believe my season's over. Clearly, he's going to be back. But that was, so I guess that's maybe mixed. We'll put that in a mixed bag. It's not the worst case scenario, but it's definitely not, he's hurt.
Sure. And I mean, I thought it was a positive that we saw him today. Obviously not with the team, not partial in training, but at least on the ball. If it was a higher grade strain or, even worse, like a rupture or something, he wouldn't be out there. And so I thought it was positive. I will say that with all the mixed, wording and even his body language, speaking about Brian, I would say that they're probably going to be cautious, right?
I think so, yeah.
He said the shooting mechanism, right? Because it's the shooting
right
leg.
Foot.
And I think his explosiveness, a guy that depends so much on his overall speed and his stop and go. My guess is that maybe it could be more than 5 weeks. I think depending, right? You might want to get him in at 4 weeks, but maybe you bring him in for 45.
Right. He's not going to be starting. I don't think he's going to be starting right away. Like, they're probably going to ease him back in. Especially now, there's the knock on. The other thing is that Paul Rothrock makes it very easy to bring him up slowly, because Rothrock does not look like a player who's going to just surrender that starting spot right now. Which we can talk about. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough situation. We asked about D-Row, and is D-Row the starter? And Brian said, well, he's the starter for now. Danny's going to get a shot.
And that's just typical Brian. And I mean that in a good way, because he is keeping everybody hungry. he's keeping that carrot right in front of him, make sure that they're all going after him. And that's a plus because D-Rose knows that he can't slow down. D-Rose knows that if he's going to be in there, he's going to have to produce, that he might have to do even better than he did in this game because, he was okay. I thought he was doing his job, occupying spaces, making sure that he forces the center backs to keep on him. I thought his pressing was good. I thought there was a lot of non-statistical stuff that he did well. His passing needs to be sharper. I've always said it, when you're the top of that spear and you're the one low nine that's allowing the game to flow off of you in the final third, you have to be a lot more accurate with your intermediate passing, not turning into pressure. All those things I think he needs to do a little bit better at. But as I said in Love Scorchers, if this is his floor, I think that's wonderful. What I will say is this, and I'm going to go off script of what we're talking about here, but I do want to nip this in the bud. We, or maybe not we, let me rephrase that. In my opinion, it is not very bright or fair that we beat up and crucify Jordan Morris for being injured. Mm-hmm. I keep hearing this is the worst DP ever, and why do we keep doing this? And a whole bunch of things that I know that we don't want to talk about, Jeremiah. But all I want to say is Jordan Morris earned his way into a DP spot. Maybe it wasn't ideal. I know that he is a guy that is not turning heads or is at the top of any big transfer news, but he's produced at a high level. I think I used the word unlucky and people didn't like that, but it has been unlucky for Jordan Morris because it hasn't just been muscle injuries. It's been
the shoulder,
a collision where you fall and you get hit in your shoulder, and it has been just unfortunate things like just falling off on a terrible surface like he did in Santa Tecla, I believe, when he had one of his first injuries. So there has been some bad luck for him. So for me, I'm going to simply wait for him to get back. It's 4 weeks. It's not as long as people think. Hopefully he gets back. Hopefully he doesn't re-injure or gets any others. But you need to be able to turn the page and see the player for what he's provided. He's been a top scorer. He's the franchise leading scorer. I mean, if you don't think that's worth DP money, then I can point to the insignias and I can point probably 5 or 6 DPs that have been an absolute bust where they've been. So leave the kid alone. Let's just pump the brakes on it. I know that you can do a lot of things with the DP spot, and I'm sure that once his contract is up, he's going to not be a DP any longer, and you could figure it out from there. But I just feel like it's unfair to just kick somebody when they're down. And if anything, Jordan Morris is down because we know that he wants to be out.
We definitely know that he wants to be out there. And I will note, I think it's sometimes tempting to ignore that in the 2 years leading up to the way he got his extent or his boost to a DP is that the 2 years before he got it, he was really healthy. And so, yes, it's very convenient to look back at last year and say, well, he got hurt a lot, and there was periods earlier in his season where he got hurt a lot. And you can look at this year and you go like, look, we're doing this again. I just feel like it's a lot of hindsight. Look, if you had a DP escalator in his contract and he hits it, good on him. That's not. I don't see how. Like, what are you supposed to do about that? I don't know what it portends for the future. I suspect that this will be the last, whatever. He's got a contract through 2027. So I suspect that at the end of, that's when his DP won't be a DP after that, I would imagine. But it just seems like it's a lot of pointless mending of garments, rending of garments to be upset about the DP deal now. They're not going to buy him out. They still owe him $5 million. They're not going to pay Jordan Morris $5 million to not play for them. I'm sorry. That's just not going to happen. Maybe next year they can do an extension that they get him off the DP deal. That's a good conversation for next year. Albert Rusnak has an option for next year. It's a good time to try to see if you can get him off a DP deal. But right now, it's just like beating up the kid for no reason. I will also, what did you make of this? And there hasn't been a lot of discussion about this. Brian said that, or he sort of implied that Jordan had felt some discomfort in pregame and wanted to play, and so he let him play. But almost immediately after the game started, Jordan, you could tell something was wrong. Certainly by the 4.5 minute mark, it looked like he was starting to limp and be in some discomfort. And then finally he sat down and just said, I need to come out. And that was probably smart because it looked like he was playing on it up until then. And so I think he was just like, there's no point in pushing this. But I don't know. Brian opened the door for second guessing because he straight up said, maybe I should have kept him out. But what did you make of that whole thing?
The reason why Brian was so open about it, in my opinion, is because he's also fallen on the sword.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate that. The Jordan Morris is taking enough criticism as it is.
Yeah.
And I praise Brian for falling on that sword. Now, as someone who's been covering soccer for quite a long time, that's not something that's unusual. A lot of times guys feel tight and it'll loosen.
Right.
Or they'll say, hey, let's activate this muscle a little bit different. Or, there's ways around things. Once I warm up, I'm going to be okay. So I don't want to sit here and quarterback this thing where I'm like, well, had he just pulled him out, it wouldn't have been a bigger issue. And I think you brought this up off the mics, just us talking. When it comes to a muscle injury, a lot of times it's out of habit. It could have been during practice. It could have been during today's, short-sided session. It could have been on Tuesday. Some of those things kind of just work themselves out. So Brian does right by saying, I got to trust my senior player. Yeah. He knows his body. And you kind of go from there.
All you can do is sort of trust the player, trust the data. I mean, they're getting all this feedback. I know it's always tempting to try to figure out who messed up. But the reality is that sometimes no one messed up and things just unfortunate happen. And it's kind of the same thing with the Pedro de la Vega injury where he gets this freak injury. And it's like, was it because he was playing on the grass at Met Stadium? I don't know, maybe it would have happened anyway. We have no way of knowing. And it just feels sometimes like people want someone to blame. And sometimes there's not really a good person to blame and shit happens, for lack of a better term.
And frustration's understandable.
Yeah,
and
totally.
That's totally fine, right? But what I don't condone is beating up on somebody for getting injured.
Right.
That part is what I have an issue with. And although I love, appreciate, and respect people's passion, I think that there's got to be a level of just having some common sense and understanding that that's just something that happens. And we, both you and I, have asked about the training regimens, how they're looking at the physical wear and tear of players. And, we've been told, we look at assets in the muscle, and there are all this data from the sport science department. So there's
Brian can't say enough nice things about their head trainer right now.
Exactly.
Every other week, he's bringing up Adam Santoni about what a great job he's done. And I think he's probably very good at his job. And again, I think the other thing is that the team you pay attention to is always the most injury prone team. Because you don't see all the little injuries that are happening at other teams usually. And, again, we actually had a story on Center at Heart that Spencer wrote that looked at injuries. And the Sounders are relative to playing, apparently there's some connection to turf. There's connection to how often teams are playing. And once you sort of correct for all that stuff, the Sounders are actually less injury prone than a lot of their peers. So, I just think that sometimes we can get a little wrapped up in this stuff, and we sometimes need to pull back and give guys a break. And look, the Sounders won. They played well, I thought, for the most part. We don't have to necessarily break down the game. We'll spend a little bit more time talking about RSL. But was there anything that you noticed on your second and third watches that jumped out at you as like, oh, I didn't really catch that the first time?
That's a great question, because I did notice that in the way the Sounders operate, Jesus Ferreira will need to have good to top performances, good to excellent performances to maximize and amplify what the Sounders want to do. I think that Albert Rusnak, and I don't know if it's by design, and maybe that's something we could have asked, he felt like he had the liberty to just be higher up the field.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he's so well positioned to header that first goal. I thought that he was doing a lot to help out, take away a lot of that pressure that was put on Osase. And when Osase was dropping really deep, he felt like he was dropping really deep. It was open up the field a little bit better and just play off of him. And it allowed, at times, Albert to kind of get behind and be a guy that was higher up the field. And my emphasis on Ferreira is that him and Albert are starting to go from, at one point we didn't know if they were going to coexist, to them just working perfectly.
It is funny.
Tandem 1 and 2. And at times, Ferreira cheats a little bit, gets a little bit higher, and then Albert knows to drop in a little bit. So those two guys, to me, have been very good. But Jesus specifically, he is the guy that finds speed and is more accurate with his passing than anyone right now when it comes to that final third. He'll drop back, he'll find the pockets, he'll find feet. We don't need to go back and read over the game, but that pass with his left foot in the through ball to Albert that Albert misses. I mean, it's
such a good ball. It's such a good ball. It's like one of the best passes that I've seen a Sounders player make in a long time.
It's a chef's kiss. And I think the part of the miss for Albert is that I don't think he knew that the ball was going to get there.
No, I know.
Then when he gets there, he's just like, oh man, it's right here.
Right.
And he just kind of hits it. So
yeah,
Jesus is going to be a huge key part of this attack. So those are the things that kind of stood out for me. But specifically for me, it was just how structured and how continuity and chemistry can get you going so quickly. And that's what we expected. I felt like they were going to have an edge on teams because this team is so well connected. And I felt like that was a huge and very obvious factor in that first game.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I thought that there was a lot to be encouraged, especially in the attacking third. I mean, there was a lot to be encouraged about basically every line. Now, how much of that is the Rapids, and especially the Rapids sort of trying to try a new system? Hard to say. We're going to do a little bit of talk on RSL after the break. Before we get to that, I did want to share one more thing that we learned this week. And there was kind of a funny little snafu with the release of the MLS roster profile. And if you don't know, every year, a couple times a year, MLS releases what they call their roster profiles. And it's a really useful piece of information because what it does is it explains where everyone is on the roster. So it says who your DPs are, who your TAM players are, who your U22s are, who your internationals are, who your homegrowns are, whether a player is on the senior roster or the supplemental roster, whether they're off, if they're off roster technically or not. And so there's a lot of good information in there, but very rarely is it like breaking news because usually, almost always, everything that's on there has already been announced. But today, when MLS released it, there were some curious pieces of information on there. One of them was a New Who's extension through 28-29 with an option for 29-30. Alex Roldan, same thing, an option for 28-29 and an option for 30. Now, we knew both of those because you are a wonderful reporter and you've broken those stories already. New Who's extension had already been confirmed multiple times by Brian Schmetzer. Whether he was purposely doing that or not, I don't know, but they had been confirmed. Alex Roldan has been less of an issue because his contract wasn't even up until next year anyway, but he's signed on an extension. But the really big piece of news was an extension for Danny Masofsky, where he was signed through the 27-28 season with an option for 28-29. Sounders had never announced that. The last time we had looked into it, we had heard that they had not come to an agreement. And sure enough, here it is. And then what even made it funnier was about within half an hour or an hour of me tweeting that out, all of a sudden the roster page got updated and it was the old contract information was up on the page. And I asked Brian about it. I didn't tell Brian that had been replaced, but I asked him about Danny Masofsky pretty specifically. And he just said, well, that's a question for Craig, but good catch. I mean, either way, I think we can confirm that these are done deals. I would expect formal announcements in the next day or two, but just kind of a funny little piece of information.
And I'm glad it happened now because I still don't understand
why are they slow. Yeah,
why not bring this out? Why do we need to find out on a snafu and why are you redacting it? I mean, it is something that's so simple that fans want to know that you should be just putting out there. So
the Alex Roldan and Niko deals have been done for a long time. Why are they not announcing those weeks, if not months ago?
And that's the part that really grinds my gears. I dislike it. That's the reason why I try so hard to try to find out early and put the information out, because there just seems to be this whole secrecy thing that doesn't need to be out there. Now, to comment on the Danny Musovski thing, I mean, I wonder when he got done. And, both you and I have talked about what's next. It's to me more than clear that he's going to have a setback year compared to last season, because last season is almost...
You do wonder what they're paying, like what his rate is. Like, I'm very curious to know, this is not the whole piece of the puzzle. We don't know how much any of these extensions are for. That will be presumably that won't be in the announcement. We won't find that out until the MLSPA information comes out. There was one other small piece of Hassani Dotson is listed as TAM, but then once I realized that the max free agent would technically make him a TAM because it would be $25,000 over the max salary. I don't actually think once the data comes out that'll be very surprising. But I don't understand the secrecy. I don't understand what the point of delaying any of this is. There doesn't seem to be any upside other than controlling the narrative. I don't know. And that doesn't really, it just seems to run counterintuitive to the way that the Sounders mostly seem to operate. And I don't know what part of the organization is slow walking it. I don't know if there's, I just don't know. It's very strange to me, and I don't understand it.
The thing for me is that 27-28 for Danny, I mean, that's just a spot there that I guess you're just going to have depth. But I continue to think that Jordan Morris wants to be a 9.
Right.
And you have a lot of cover or a lot of competition at the wing position. It's Jordan, Osase, Danny's your third.
All three are under contract at least through 2027 now. That seems like a lot of logjam potentially.
Yeah.
You also, whatever. I mean, you can't have too much. It seems like one of those players ultimately will have to leave. I don't know when. Like right now, it's nice to have all three of them, but assuming health, which whatever, we can't. I guess you can never assume, but it just seems like how are you going to balance all three of their minutes? Osaze De Rosario does not look like a player who is ready to come off the bench for the whole season. Danny Musovski, we know, is not going to be happy just coming off the bench. Jordan Morris, when he's healthy, is not going to want to come off the bench. Paul Rothrock, you can kind of go down the list. You've got like 7 or 8 guys who none of whom see themselves as reserves, whose performances at their peak suggest they are not reserves.
For me, it's just, if not a logjam, is it feels like something that they're going to use to be like, maybe we don't need to get a U22 striker, and that's something that I've wanted. Like I want early retirement. I mean, I want it. I want to see it. I want to see it.
I want to see this team spend some. I think we all want to see the team spend some money. But like I just mentioned, Albert Rusnak's contract is going to be. He has an option due at the end of this year, and okay, so maybe he comes in as a TAM. What are you going to do with that? Okay, so you're going to bring in a DP to play what?
Well, I'll tell you this, and people are going to hate this. Absolutely. They're going to hate it. I might get hate mail, but I don't know if everybody knows, but that high TAM for Ferreira is only going to go so far. At some point, in my opinion,
he's going
to have to give him a DP spot.
Absolutely.
And if he is producing, You should, absolutely. So that's why, additionally from Albert, I don't know, Pedro or obviously Jordan at one point, but there is going to be a lot of competition there for that DP spot. But to me, Jesus is the clear-cut one that's going to need a DP contract.
Well, and I think that's a good point, because my understanding was when he was signed, he has a similar escalator as Jordan in his contract, where over the course of 2 years, I think it was like something like 30 goals and assists. If he hits that, he's going to be a DP. So maybe that's right there. Maybe that's your spot, exactly. Which people will love.
Yeah, they're going to be excited.
You're going to be really excited.
I can't believe we just got another escalator DP. Woo! I can see it. But
hey, but if Jesus is performing, no complaints here.
I'm happy about it. Absolutely. At his age, with his overall talent, I continue to just be amazed with his evolution. And that's something else that I asked him about this week, is that he's evolved from being this guy that was thought about as just a goal scorer. That was his only attribute, is goal scoring. And now he's becoming a little bit of a playmaker. And I think he's grown well into the position. So if he's producing, if he's giving you 30 contributions,
right.
Yeah, give him a DP, absolutely.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Well, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about RSL. You're listening to Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network.
Sounder at Heart has been around in one form or another since 2009. In 2026, though, we make a pretty significant evolution when we go analog. Yes, that's right. In the year of our Lord 2026, we are publishing a real-life magazine. We're calling this thing 4, as in Sounder at Heart 4.0, but we're stylizing it as IV because we absolutely love Roman numeral. And if you want to refer to it as IV, that's cool too. The first issue has a comic book style cover that was hand-drawn by local artist Kevin Newber. Features by Tim Foss, Susie Rance, and Charlie Boehm, a statistical deep dive by Kat Bush, a Q&A with Brian Schmetzer, a column by G. Willow Wilson, and photographs by Noah Reif, Max Aquino, Mike Russell, and Jane Dershowitz. I could not possibly be more proud of the work everyone put into making this, and I think you're going to absolutely love it. If you'd like to get your hands on one of these limited edition copies, we're currently selling them for $15 on our website. Get yours now. Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Haxon Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Haxon Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at haxonferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code Sounder at Heart, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to haxonferments.com, use the code Sounder at Heart at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Haxon Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. All right, RSL this week. This has been sort of not a bugaboo team, but a bugaboo location for the Sounders. They have not won any match of any sort at RSL since 2000, or anyone in MLS. Yeah, no, they haven't won a match outright since 2012. That was in the playoffs. They haven't won a regular season game at RSL since 2011. You may remember that as the Lamar Nagel goal. He had a goal off of in a driving rain, a blasted goal, and I think that actually ended RSL's record home winning or home unbeaten streak. But it's been very, very tough for the Sounders to get results at RSL. Admittedly, a lot of those results have come when they've had to be rotating the lineup or playing midweek or in the middle of fixture congestion or whatever else. There are no such excuses for this game. In fact, Diego Luna, I think, is likely out for this one. They are still trying to get clearance for a couple of their internationals to get in. Last week, they lost to Vancouver while using a whole bunch of young players, some of whom I would imagine will start again. Look, that's not a guaranteed win or anything like that for the Sounders, but the circumstances are not going to get a lot more friendly than they are this week. It feels like this is when this stupid streak has to end, right?
I totally agree. I think that it's now or never. The Sounders are finally going in with a team that is not just now rotated, but that, as we mentioned before the break, they have the advantage of chemistry and consistency. I think that they match up well. Looking back at that Vancouver game, I do think that Vancouver and Seattle set up in many ways, or at least in some ways, very similar. So I think that RSL did kind of have a good preview of what they might see with the Sounders. RSL is a way more direct team than Colorado. They're going to want to go off of the quicker and more over-the-top type of ball, and that might mean that the Sounders are not as aggressive as they were against Colorado with their press. I think that Piola is a guy that cheats a lot. He wants to stay right there next to the center back, and if the press is pretty high, he's waiting for somebody to play him in. Whether it's Catranis or it's Gazzo on the other side, he's going to want to be played through. What I will say is that RSL against Vancouver, the first 25, 30 minutes, they really pushed Vancouver, and they were maybe more aggressive than I thought they were going to be, specifically with their wing backs. They set up with a 3-man back line where Gazzo and Catranis were pretty high up the field, to the point that I feel like Gazzo got caught a couple of times. He got a silly yellow, I may say, because he got caught up way too far. And AZ Jackson for Vancouver, he's no slowpoke. So, he had room to get behind. And so those are some of the things that Seattle's going to probably want to exploit. But it does tell me that maybe this RSL team is going to be a little bit more aggressive, I guess, than they usually are.
Yeah, what did you think of Gozo? He seems to be the player that everyone's excited about right now. I think he's 18. 18, yep. And he has been a star for the youth national team. I don't know, do you have any particular thoughts on the next up-and-coming star?
I really do think that he has a lot of the qualities that we see out of, and I'm not saying he's the same player. He just has a lot of the qualities that you saw, like a guy like Alex Freeman or Orlando City, where he is just very athletic. He gets forward very easily. I think that defensively, he loses sight of the shape of the team, and I think that costs him a lot of times. His services into the box are not maybe top quality prospect type of services into the box, but he does have the goods, has the frame, has the speed. I think that, like I said, he gets pretty smoothly into the attacking third. So I think he's a quality player. I'm not, like swinging my pom-poms for him like he is, a incredible, never seen before, generational changing player.
Right.
But he is a good player.
And so is there anyone, who are the players that you're most worried about right now?
To be honest, I love Catrice. I think he's a guy that, since he's been with RSL, he gives them the most width on their left side. He has the best service, in my opinion, for those early balls that I think Pio is going to want to exploit. I thought that out of the midfield, Kaliskan had a really good game. He's a guy that I felt like did well at working in the half turns and finding some pockets. They're not a team that holds the ball a lot. They want to get forward pretty quickly. I think, what's the name of the winger? I'm going to kill this name. It's like Hassani. I thought that he was another player that was interesting. There is something about how he gets into prime scoring positions that is very interesting. I think he has a good left foot. So it's they have some players, but unless a lot of their new players get cleared, I think Seattle has to see this as a win. And I think, look, Brian did a good job at giving Paulo Mastroeni credit, because he does always bring it. His teams are always well coached, they're disciplined, they know what they want to get. He actually said he doesn't know if they're going to set up with a 3-man backline or 4-man, because they're going to be at home. It's going to be very different than they set up at Vancouver. So we'll see where that goes. But I do think that there's some potential for RSL to make it difficult for Seattle. But in terms of talent, in terms of a team that's already set up and ready to go, Seattle should be able to come into this game and at the very least be the protagonist.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this lineup that RSL rolled out last week. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like DeAndre Yedlin and Sam Junkwa were both playing as center backs. So you were basically playing with, this would be like sort of the equivalent of Nuhu and Alex Roldan lining up next to Jackson Reagan. That's a pretty aggressive center back. Like there's not a lot of pure defending and a lot more sort of in space and sort of like essentially those are fullbacks playing as center backs.
Yes, and they did do a good job at getting Yedlin covered when Yedlin would get high. But yes, you're absolutely correct. It's one of those setups where when they would build up, when they would possess, it was only two in the back, and Yedlin was the one jetting out the field.
Okay.
And you would keep Jaquan and Glad lower and deeper. But it does provide some opportunities for Seattle to maybe exploit him in transition. But Vancouver couldn't really do it. And they're a pretty good transition team. So, again, that goes credit to Pablo because he does a good job at keeping his guys understanding where those triggers are and when do I need to drop, who needs to cover me. And that's why, in my opinion, it put a lot of strain on a younger midfield. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Seattle could have the advantage. Because, look, I thought that Andrews Krubas, because he's one of the best sixes in MLS, he was him and Berhalter, I think they had a lot of space to work with playing centrally because the RSL midfield was being asked to do so much.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it lines up for a game that, look, nothing is guaranteed in MLS. This game is at RSL. Like I said, the Sounders have not won a regular season game there in 14 years. Nothing's guaranteed. But look, if they're going to do it, this seems like the time to do it. This would be a huge boost to the Sounders to start their 5-game road trip with a win. And, I like their chances, put it that way. One other piece of news I just wanted to share, the tickets for the CONCACAF Champions Cup match in Spokane went on sale this week. The Sounders will be playing the Vancouver Whitecaps. Of course, the first leg is going to be March 12th in Vancouver. And then the second leg, the home leg, will be March 18th at Spokane. And I just looked at tickets right now. Basically sold out. The only tickets available that I can tell are these $250 tickets that are obviously very expensive, but there's not a lot of them left at that price even. Basically, if you have not gotten tickets, I would urge you to get connected with ECS because ECS is supposed to have some tickets. I don't know how easy it will be to get those, but it's going to be a good atmosphere. 5,000 plus fans there. I think the Sounders have all the players have been saying the right things about this as an opportunity and not as a pain in the butt to have to go over there. I know that there's a lot of people that will probably just drive over for the day. A few more people, I'm sure, will stay overnight. But I think there's going to be a good Spokane local crowd that shows up too. I think a lot of people in Spokane are Sounders fans. And if they're not necessarily Sounders fans, they're at least curious about seeing this level of soccer. And I think it's good that it's going to be, an opponent like the Whitecaps who might actually be a little closer. It is funny that the road leg is actually going to be closer than the home leg in this one to Seattle. But I don't know. I know you've got your son is going to school out there, so that's kind of a fun opportunity. I don't know. Any other thoughts on this game in Spokane?
Yes, I have one more, but I did have one more. I have some thoughts about the Spokane thing, but I was having a hard time getting my notes on my dumb phone. I had to reset it. Oh. But I did not want to move on from RSL without pointing out that DeAndre Yedlin came off in the 85th. Yeah. And he's likely out.
Oh.
With a knee injury for this one.
No. Okay, that's not good.
And the guys said they're hoping to bring to have their paperwork ready to go. Mm-hmm. And the one that I'm told, just looking at my WhatsApp, that I think could be ready to go is wingback Juan Manuel Sanabria. And he is a guy that's going to be very interesting for RSL. The other players that could see some minutes in this game if their paperwork gets ready is Lucas Engel. He's a defender. And this one I'm going to butcher again, but this forward seems to have a lot of people very intrigued. And it's Morgan Gilovegi. And so if their visas and their paperwork gets approved, they could see some minutes against the Sounders. So I did not want to move on without saying that. Now, when it comes to Spokane, man, I'm excited. I am excited for the people in that area, for CONCACAF madness. Tell me this is not CONCACAF.
This is so CONCACAF.
This is so CONCACAF, man. And I get excited. I love it when people get to see that, because this is the type of CONCACAF things, just like a dog all of a sudden randomly going into the field, or a raccoon falling into like popcorn. Like all those things, all this CONCACAF stuff, those are the things that make this thing exciting. The guys are intrigued. I haven't talked to guys who are thrilled about having to go to Spokane. But
are they going to go the night before? They're probably going to go the night before, right?
I'm hearing that they're going to go 2 days prior.
2 days.
That's what I'm hearing. I don't know.
Oh,
see what
interesting.
But
like they'll like make a little base out there.
Yeah, I think just a couple of days before, and I want to say part of that could be because of CONCACAF. You know, they do the presser the day before and all of those things. It might make it easier for CONCACAF, and you know how they roll. So I think it might be a thing where they might ask the Sounders to be there a couple of days in advance.
I will say, if this goes well, I kind of like the idea of doing this on a semi-regular basis, especially these earlier round games. Maybe not round of 16, but I could see them routinely trying to do, because it is good ambassadorship. And look, the Sounders need to grow outside of just Seattle. They can't just be such a Seattle-centric team.
Agreed.
And the Seahawks are very much like a Pacific Northwest team. I don't know. The Sounders are a ways off. The Mariners, though, are a Pacific Northwest team. I think it's good for the Sounders to kind of spread the gospel, to be going out to places like Spokane. Again, I don't know if you can really do this every year, but I like the idea of routinely going out there and playing games, because I think it's a good practice just to sort of get out into the community more.
Yeah, I think it's cool. It's going to be hilarious to see Thomas Mueller going from playing in Bayern Munich and some of the best stadiums in Europe.
I mean, this is kind of a cool stadium, though.
I have not seen it. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be kind of a pretty cool stadium, actually.
Yeah, I have no idea what that looks like at all. But just the city coming into somewhere like that, I mean, I think it's going to throw them off. And we'll see. Obviously, they're going to have time to recognize the field and practice and all that stuff. But look, for what it's worth, I think Vancouver struggled a lot more in their first game.
They did.
Away, on the road.
And at home. They didn't score again until like the 80-something minute.
That's also true. So we'll see, man. Vancouver, for them being as good as they were last season, and they do have some very quality players, they're also moving some pieces around, and they're kind of just getting into the grind of things. So.
Well, and I think this will also be a good sense of, they beat RSL last week 1-0 at home. If the Sounders are able to, the Sounders struggle with RSL, maybe it's a better result than we thought. If the Sounders do well, if the Sounders were to win this by a multi-goal on the road, and maybe suggest that Vancouver is not quite at the level that they were last year, at least not at this point. So there's good intrigue, I think, in this game. And I think that's about what we got, right?
Yeah, I think that we covered all of our bases. We talked about the training, the injuries, the first game. So yeah, man, I think we covered everything. Just ready for the second game and seeing where things are at. I'm trying to figure out what it is about this curse of RSL that they
it's so weird.
Get over, and so yeah. Again,
it'd be nice to not talk about it anymore.
It'd be nice to not talk about it. But I will say this. I can't remember the last time I was so confident that they were going to go to RSL and win. So I do think that the setup, the group that they have against the type of RSL team they're facing, I will put my money where my mouth is and say that the Sounders get that win.
All right.
On Saturday.
Let's call it there. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you to Niko. You can, of course, catch him on Blue Sky, El Rolo NW. You can catch him on YouTube at Soccer Down Here, as well as Lobbing Scorchers. Of course, we do Friday every week with Niko on what we learned this week on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. This is No How to Get This. I'm Jeremiah Shan. We'll catch you next time.
job. Let's go f***ing Sounders.